Thinking of planning a wedding in what we think is towards the ends of COVID? Watch this video and I'll give you some hints about it. Hi, this is Jack with Vacationies, and I want to talk to you about what's happening now, November 2021, related to COVID and planning destination weddings. So just go on the premise. This is an update, and I think I've done one or two of them. I've been traveling a lot, so I want to give you some feedback on what I'm seeing. The first thing is, when you're picking the destination for your wedding, you really have to look at some of these destinations because many of them have new protocol, changing protocol, and you really need to think about who your guests are as to where you can pick for your wedding. As examples, the top 3 destinations for destination weddings right now are Mexico, Punta Cana, and Jamaica. So now let's look at what's happening in some of these locations so I can give you a sense when you think about planning in these destinations, what it means to you and your guests. So now let's look at Mexico. So right now, Mexico has no requirements, and not, Cancun, Riviera Maya, Vallarta, Cabo, the whole country of Mexico. Really, you don't need to be vaccinated. You don't need a negative COVID test to get in. So now, remember that the CDC, anybody coming back into the United States from any international destination, does require a negative COVID test within 3 days of your arrival into the U.S. So again, for Mexico, you're fine. Now, Jamaica has gone back and forth. They do not require anybody to be vaccinated, but they do require a negative COVID test prior to entering Jamaica. Right now, I think the test can be taken 72 hours prior to arrival. So again, it's just something you have to think about. I have said to clients that it may not be a bad idea if guests get a negative COVID test or get a COVID test prior to going into any destination. Why? Because let's go on the premise that the average wedding guest stays 4 nights. Well, if they're staying 4 nights and they do their COVID test a night or 2 before they go, the likelihood if they go and they test positive, they were probably positive before they went versus getting something there because they're going to test you a day or 2 before you go home. So you may only be there a day or 2. So I don't think it's a bad idea to get tested prior to going, because that'll give your guests the ability to say, look, I got tested, I'm positive here, maybe I shouldn't go, versus getting there and testing positive, and then what do they do? And we can talk about that later. So let's go through some of the locations, and I can give you some updates as of the first week of November 2021. Now, so when I look at Jamaica, again, you need a negative COVID test to get in. The Dominican Republic is interesting. So in Punta Cana, no negative test, but they do have a health form that you have to fill out online, and you're supposed to print it and bring it with you. When we look at Grand Cayman, because that's another popular place prior to COVID, Grand Cayman is not accepting U.S. guests currently. So that one's off the list. Turks, again, another popular destination, you have to have a negative COVID test to get in to Turks. And with Turks, you have to be vaccinated. So it's important that as you think about these destinations that may be opening, you really need to look at what's happening today as you plan a year from now. But the reality is what they have today could be totally different. So things change. When you're working with your travel planner today, planning a wedding for a year from now, I think it's very important you look at the protocol in place today. Not that it's going to be there a year from now, but it may be. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's important. Other thing to know when you're flying. So you have to fly to these destinations. So just know still, as in November of 2021, as soon as you enter an airport, you need a mask. As soon as you get on the plane, that mask has to be on, covering your face and nose. I was on a flight last week where a flight attendant had an altercation with a gentleman that thought that the mask was used as a chin guard and basically told him if he didn't pull it up, when he landed, they were going to have the police come. As an example, in Mexico and Jamaica and Punta Cana, where I've been, you have to have the mask on in the transfer vehicle until you get to the resort. Every resort has a different protocol that they're following. Some are amazing, and some, in my opinion, are just very loose. So most of the resorts will want you to wear a mask when you're in public space and in a restaurant walking to and from the table. Once you're at the table, you're fine. People have asked me what's the status with buffets. So this is interesting. Most of the resorts I've been to have opened their buffets again, typically for breakfast and lunch. But what they're doing is they're having staff serve you. You are not allowed to touch the utensils or touch the food. But I was to a resort recently that actually had buffets open just as normal. So you could walk up to the buffet. They had little gloves and things that you can put on prior to touching the utensils, but you could serve yourself. What you will see is staff at all the resorts I've been to are still wearing masks. Some are wearing gloves. And in terms of getting back to the United States at the resorts, the majority of resorts are still doing COVID tests at the resorts. So the protocol I've seen is once you check in, they will either have an app or they will send you to someone. They will schedule your COVID test typically a day or two prior to your departure. Most of the resorts are doing the COVID test for free. A couple of the resorts are charging. I stayed at a resort about, say 3 weeks ago, and I paid $30 for my COVID test. But I had it within 30 minutes of having the COVID test done. Now, related to your wedding events, I know we've had brides ask this question. So most of the resorts are very flexible. I was with one of the wedding managers at one of the Charisma resorts recently. We had this discussion. They are asking the brides and grooms, are they red, green, or yellow related to COVID? And they will actually give you wristbands so that your guests can wear them. You know, red meaning don't touch me, yellow meaning maybe, and green means, you know, we're back to hugging and everything's normal. But when they set your wedding up, they're may have a discussion with you about how you want the table set. Do you want social distancing in place? I was attending a wedding for a client that had a gigantic table with only 4 seats at the table. I was at a resort and I saw tables with 10 seats at tables. So I think you just have to communicate how you feel related to COVID and your guests feel related to COVID to the wedding planners. They will do however you want them to do to make everybody feel comfortable and safe and healthy at the resorts. Other things your guests may see at the resorts is we have seen sometimes that the saunas and the spas may have reduced capacities. We're also seeing that some services have been eliminated. As an example, I stayed at a hotel 2 weeks ago. They no longer had turn-down service in the evening with the chocolate on the bed. It was the highlight of my stay, typically at that resort in the evening, to look forward to going back and having some chocolate. I asked what happened, and they said again, they are minimizing staff coming in rooms and touching things. I had a stay at a resort a couple months ago that basically their protocol with room service was they would not allow the staff in the room to deliver room service. So they would come to the room, they would put it on a push cart, and then it was up to you to bring it in the room. So again, everything is evolving. I think as time goes on, we're seeing higher occupancies at the resort. We're seeing reduced protocols. So that's kind of what's happening in the top destinations for your destination wedding related to COVID. I can tell you I have traveled. As long as you pick the right resorts, I am feeling safe. If you go in a restaurant and you tell them that you would prefer to sit in a corner or someplace away, they are spacing the tables, they are spacing chairs by the pool, so they will give you the flexibility for you to feel safe and healthy at the resort and have an enjoyable time. I can tell you as someone that has probably traveled 10 to 15 times in the past 9 months that what you put into it is what you get out of it. So if you're looking for an experience, you will still have fun, you can still ride bikes, you can still play volleyball. It's just how you want to maintain your safety. So those are the updates related to COVID and destination weddings planning as well as attending in November of 2021.